Just how uncomfortable is Thanksgiving going to be for the Lamb family? From 1 to 10, 1 being not so uncomfortable, 10 being excruciatingly uncomfortable. I call it a 12. It's probably going to be a 12. So let's get into this. I am doing a quick video. We are just going to do bullet points. I am going to do another video maybe in days. Well, I want to wait until the video of Sylvia comes out first. Sylvia is who we learned from the Julie Roy's video was the maid or housekeeper of Joni Lamb. I want to wait until that's done as well. I want to take a deep dive and go into it, but I really want to process what I've watched. I like to watch videos at least twice, but this is just going to be a quick dive, not a deep dive at all, just a bullet point. I have 8 bullet points, just going through my initial thoughts. So the first thing, before we get to the first thought, the first thing is it's recorded, right? The video with JW and with Rebecca, they're in the police station, Colleyville police station, it's recorded. And some of the things that they say throughout, it was noteworthy to me because I was like, did they forget that this was recorded? And you know what? They probably did. I'm sure that they were told that it was recorded, but this happens all the time. I see it all the time in my practice. People know that they're being recorded and then they just forget and then they just act natural. You guys, if you watch any videos where you see people just acting very naturally when they know they're on Zoom, have you seen that? And they don't even have all clothes fully on and then they're having to go to court. There was just one recently with a Detroit judge and the police officer was taking the oath and the judge is like, you don't have any pants on? He didn't have any pants on. People just are very, very casual and then they just forget. So the first point I want to make out is this was an interview. It was not an interrogation. So JW and Rebecca were asked to come in, obviously, and they were of their own free will to do so. They didn't have to stay. They didn't have to come in. They didn't have to participate. This was all voluntary for them. And guess what? They can bring an attorney all day long, all day long. You can bring an attorney if you're a witness. You can bring an attorney if you're a perpetrator. You can bring in an attorney if you're just a person of interest, whatever it might be. Everybody has a right to an attorney. Attorney can come. So that's that. They were free to leave if they didn't want to stay, but they came in twice, which I found interesting. Number 2, the attorney being there is not a big deal. And the attorney being employed by Daystar, not a big deal because JW and Rebecca are employees of Daystar. Plus, Rebecca is the daughter of Joni Lamb. So, of course, they probably already know this attorney. This attorney might be a retained attorney and is somebody that they were just like, hey, come on down to the police station and, sit in on this. But more likely than not, they probably had a conversation of how it was going to go. But that's not unusual at all. I've done that so many times. I've done it where I go in with, an initial to talk with if there's a client that was a suspect, and I would go in just to kind of find out what they have, but I really wouldn't let my client say anything, and I would just, do the talking. I've also done it, and even more so, where I'm going in and it's witnesses and people just don't feel comfortable and they want an attorney with them. I've done that. I go in. So it's very similar to that. I'm just sitting there and I'm just monitoring. I'll speak up if I have to, but typically you're just sitting there, especially if they're just witnesses. Not at all a big deal. I've done that many times. I've watched it hundreds of times. I used to work in a police department, so I would watch in real time when I was a prosecutor with the detectives that they were interviewing witnesses. I myself would be in there interviewing witnesses, and we would have a detective there. And, if they wanted their attorney there, yeah, you could do it all the time. I've seen it. I mean, thousands of times we do it. All right. Number 3. Was the interview unusual with the detective? Well, it could be. There were some things that I found were lacking, but I'm not going to get on the detective. Everybody has their own style. Yes, it's kind of casual. That is what it looks like. I mean, it is because it's an interview. It's not an interrogation. These people are coming in voluntarily. So it is going to look pretty casual. And it's not about really essentially building a rapport. It's more like handling. So that detective, they have to handle the 2 witnesses and the attorney. So you're handling all, which brings me to my next point within this point. Why didn't this detective separate them? I would not have interviewed them together. I would have separated the witnesses. That's typically how it's done. That's how I would have done it. Don't know what happened here. Don't know if they made a requirement that in order for them to come in, that they were going to come in together. That could have happened. We just don't know. We don't see it. But, you know, sometimes you got to joke around too. Sometimes, you know, to get information, you got to loosen people up. You got to do that. And I'm sure the detective isn't a detective on his first day. This is likely a detective who's been a detective for quite some time. Sorry, I have to shut my phone off, but it's not shutting off. I can't do it. Okay, there it is. So the next thing was about getting the letter. And it was referred to as a letter, but then it was referred to as a document. Rebecca was saying, oh, it just has JW's thoughts on it. Well, how long was this letter? It was hard for me to understand. This is where the attorney, what he said just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever when they were talking about redacting it. Okay, I get that. We do that all the time. I probably do it at least one. Let's go with 2 times a week, because I mean, I do it all the time. We redact documents when I'm taking a deposition. You know, you're taking a deposition of my client. Okay, they're asking for some type of document. Well, it has to come to me first. I got to look at it. I got to make sure there's no privileged communication in there, and I'm going to redact what's not going to go to you. It doesn't take weeks and years to do. It takes a couple hours. So, I mean, the way that this attorney was talking was that it's going to take, you guys remind me, I can't remember. Was he saying this was going to take hours or days? How long was this document? 500 pages? It's just thoughts of JW on Joshua Brown. How long was this document? How long would it take? Seriously. I was stunned to hear that. Did I miss something? Is this a document that's like over 1,000 pages? Okay, then I can see it might take you a week. Bizarre. That was absolutely bizarre to me. And what needed to be redacted? I didn't understand that. So we'll get to that. All right, number 4. Why are we now just seeing this video? Well, there was an active, ongoing, open investigation. So they can't, Colleyville Police isn't going to be able to just give their materials and what they're doing, you know, it's their work product. They're not going to give it away. The only way to get it is through a FOIA request. That's the Freedom of Information Act. Anybody can ask for things that, you know, if there's a closed file, then they can ask for it. And that's what happened here. Jonathan and Susie probably, I think it was, that's what I heard, was that they submitted a FOIA request and they got the videos. That's why we're seeing it now. And then they gave those videos to Julie Royce. Number 5, other witness videos. So if the detectives were investigating, naturally, there would be videos of interviews. Just saw it with JW and with Rebecca. And we just heard about it with Sylvia. That's not out yet, but we're looking forward to seeing that. Was Joni interviewed? Was Josh Brown interviewed? Was Rachel interviewed? Who else was interviewed? I'm very curious as to any other interviews, if there's any other tapes. Is it just Rebecca and JW and then Sylvia? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't know, but I would be very interested, because a FOIA request would be submitted for any of those interviews, from my understanding, if there were any other video interviews, that they should have received all of them. So I don't know. Number 6, troubling statements by Rebecca and JW. JW was describing a situation in the pool where Josh Brown was in there and touching children, and saying that he had his hands all over Jonathan and Susie's daughter, and that JW was saying he was waving his hands to get the attention of Susie and claiming that she didn't see him or didn't want to see him, something like that. It was a bit weird. I would submit that she didn't see him. If Jonathan was trying to get JW was trying to get Susie's attention and he didn't get it, she likely didn't see him. It's probably as simple as that. And then JW concludes that, oh, well, he would have gone off on somebody that was kissing a child on the lips like he saw. Well, why didn't you then? You know, but he didn't. He didn't act at all, from my understanding. Why didn't he do anything? Then he concludes that since Jonathan and Susie didn't do it, because it's their business, they're going to defer. Rebecca kept using that. We're going to defer to them. They're the parents. But we care. We care a lot. And so it's kind of a hard pill to swallow. There's some things in there that I have to process, but things that were just sticking out like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Seems like there's this overture. She's, she's claiming on the one hand she doesn't know who to trust, but then making statements. So there's something there that I'm going to try to hash out in my own brain. But this the way that Rebecca was coming off, it seems a bit different from how Susie initially described her. Susie described her as somebody that was on their side, that somebody that really did care and was essentially demanding justice, which is interesting because they both said that separately, because JW had gone out of the room, I think, to go to the restroom. And then Rebecca said that she just wants justice, wants to know the truth. And then he said that too when he came in. And so do they want the truth? Yeah, you can have multiple truths at the same time. You could say that you want to know the truth, but are you going to do something to get to the truth is really what's at issue. Because if they really, really wanted the truth, and they knew that the detective wanted that letter or that document that contained JW's thoughts and impressions about Josh Brown, if you really wanted to get to the truth, you would have helped in any way. You would have bent over backwards to do that. But yet here you are with your attorney who is saying, I've got to take these millions of hours to redact. I don't know what it is. It was just something inordinately unusual as far as how long it would take to redact information. And then referring to Sylvia as she's just the housekeeper. Now, I don't know if it just came out wrong, but is that something that we're seeing a revelation of your heart? And then he referred to himself as being functional when they were talking in the context of dysfunctional. They were talking about, Rebecca was talking about her dysfunctional, toxic family, which I thought was very interesting. And so his statements, he was saying that he's functional. That's how JW described himself. He's functional as opposed to being dysfunctional. And he made statements about what he saw and what he would be doing about it and what he thought Jonathan and Susie should be doing about it. But maybe they're cool with it, he said. And that rings to me of dysfunctional. That's a dysfunctional thought process. You think that Jonathan and Susie are cool with somebody kissing their child like that, the way that he described for 2 seconds on the lips? No, nope. Number 7, the letter. So the detective would not have been able to just take the letter, right? They're there voluntarily. Okay. So he has to defer to them. But if you want to get clever, he could have just picked up that letter and started reading it out loud because it was being videotaped. There was a camera there. He could have done that. Now, would the attorney have stopped him? Probably. But he could have at least tried. You don't know unless you try, right? He could have tried. He could have caught that attorney off guard, and maybe the attorney wouldn't have said anything. But who knows? Don't know if before they got into the room, there was some agreement that was made. We just don't know. But he actually read it. The detective read it. And if he read it and saw something that was concerning, something that contained information that would be relevant to his investigation, he could have asked for a search warrant. He could have submitted that to a judge and could have gotten that document, whatever you want to call it, thoughts on a Google, whatever, or a letter. He could have gotten it unredacted, or he could have gone to a prosecuting attorney to open a case and to subpoena that thing. So I do remember hearing that perhaps there was an attempt to get a search warrant and that it was rejected. I could be mistaken, but I think I remember that. And if that's the case, then the judge didn't feel as though there was enough information to sign off on a search warrant. So here's the thing. Remember, there's a couple of things going on here. There are concerns with the behavior of Joshua Brown. Concerns, right? Yes. But then there was also the cover-up of a child who did outcry to the mom. So certainly this detective would have interviewed Susie Lamb, the mom, and she would have told the detective what her child said. Okay? So that's a specific crime. The other things, very, very useful, very, very concerning, and very, very material. Those concerns about Josh Brown touching the kids in the pool, the kissing, those things, the exposure, the nude exposure. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were here. Those things are interesting. Those things are noteworthy. Those things are of concern and would be relevant. But there's a separate thing going on here. It's the investigation of an actual crime, a specific crime of a touching, and the child outcried to the mom as to the act, but not the identity of the perpetrator. So the detective already knows this. So he's investigating an act. So could that be why the judge didn't sign off on it? Because whatever the detective said, what he read from that letter that JW generated didn't meet the necessary criteria to, get that search warrant. That could be. Don't know. These are just things to think about. These are just my thoughts that I came up with when I first watched the video. And the last one, number 8, Thanksgiving Day, the Lamb family. What's that going to look like? JW and Rebecca can't walk this back. Did they know that this was coming out? I don't know. Probably not. Is this hitting them pretty hard? Probably, because they can't take any of it back. Remember what I said in the beginning? When you're told that you're being recorded, you kind of forget when you start getting comfortable and you're casual, and she said a lot of stuff. She, in no uncertain terms, does not like Joshua Brown. She had some stuff to say about her mom's beloved son-in-law. And I can just imagine, just based upon what we know, what we've seen, this isn't going to make Joni very happy. And she can't walk that back. And JW was saying the same thing. They were talking about how Josh Brown was mean. And when he's in front of Joni, he acts one way, but when they're not there, acts mean to kids. I mean, I would ask for examples, just ask for examples. They were talking about how mean he is and they don't like him. And she even said that he had narcissistic qualities. Well, give me some examples. Tell me what you mean by that. Well, what happened? What happened to cause you to believe that? Just very easy questions. Could have said those things, but he didn't. So that was one thing that bothered me. The other thing that bothered me, he didn't separate them. The casualness, the joking, that doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I have to do that. We all do. Cops, lawyers, it's detectives, sorry, and lawyers, that you have to just do your job and you have to figure out how you're going to do it. And you have to figure out the best way you do it. And if you've never been in, a litigator or a detective where you're investigating, then you might not understand that. But if you watch enough of, even court TV, because you can see a lot, you'll get the gist. You'll understand it. You're going to see how the detective might hone in really, really hard on somebody that's in there because they are a person of interest. That's a perpetrator. But when it's a witness, it's completely different. And that's what we saw here. So I'm just wondering, what is Rachel doing at this point in time? What's Josh Brown doing at this time? I can just imagine Rachel is absolutely seething. The dissemination of these videos are probably going to cause, a further rift in the family. According to Rebecca, they were already having, they already have a toxic family, and she's trying to reduce that or, make it better. But I think this is going to cause a rift in the family. What are your thoughts? I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm sure you're going to watch. There's going to be so many people talking about this, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say. And stay tuned. Just in a few days, I'm going to be talking about Tom Casey. Their hearing that's coming up on Thursday, November 6th, I found is by Zoom. And I'm going to try to watch that. So I will report back to you after that hearing. Talk to you soon.